We were just chatting this morning about, we've seen a bunch of our friends being back here, and we've also bumped into a bunch of neighbors that we've seen being back here. And it's just really fun thinking through, as Christians, we're told, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. I think a lot of people grow up very well-meaning in churches. They're very heavy, at least the ones we've kind of grown up in, on you've got to love everybody, be nice to everybody.
Be friends with everybody.
Be friends with everybody. And what they're describing is neighborliness. Neighbors are the people who you do life with. You work with people, those are your neighbors. You live around people, those are your neighbors. You do activities together, those are your neighbors. You bump into them, you go to church. Anyone who's in your actual geographical life is a neighbor. And so it's what wonderful advice. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, when we love ourselves, we're talking about interests. So when I love my wife as myself, it's me understanding what Kelly's interests are, so I have her best interests at heart. So what is the difference between a neighbor and a friend?
Because it can be very close.
Because sometimes your neighbors are your friends, and sometimes your friends are your neighbors. Sometimes your friends aren't your neighbors. Sometimes your neighbors aren't your friends. We need to be able to define what's going on.
A friend is someone you enjoy 80% of their interests, and you respect 20% of their interests. And a neighbor is you respect 80% of their interests and enjoy 20%.
By the word respect, we mean you can hold space for, if we disagree, if my interests and your interests are not aligned on something, it's like, okay, we respect each other. So either I'm not going to go there and violate your conscience to make you change, or you make me change, or whatever. It's like, oh, I see that as not something that so I'll respect that.
Yes.
But enjoyment means, oh, we both like this thing, we both have this interest, we both enjoy this, and we can be more and more honest, and we can move toward greater intimacy on these topics, on these things in our life.
A lot of people, I think, mistake neighborliness for friendships throughout their life, because being Christians, we do hold space for different values and people's different opinions. However, if you have two people and you only share 20% of enjoyable interests, that becomes neighborliness. Because what happens if you force that into friendship is one of the two ends up suppressing themselves in order to hold space for the other person's opinions. We don't want to control people.
We don't want to control people, and we don't want to be controlled by them.
Right.
It's so hard with how polarized things have gotten lately, whether it was the BLM stuff, the mandate stuff, the political stuff, there's so many things that we can polarize over, theological stuff. When you know that someone has 80% of their life is in stark contrast to your values, your interests, but they are in your workspace, they're in your geographical space, they're in your whatever
living space,
they are a neighbor, right? So you don't have to be friends with them. That's the big kind of error that the church has pushed on so many Christians, is just be a doormat, just love everybody and invite them into your most inner parts and be abused by them and be controlled by them. And it's like, no, they're a neighbor, so I will love them as a neighbor. I'll be cordial to them. I'll be respectful of their interests. So if I know someone is a crazy BLM mandate follower, I can still respect those interests. Like, I know, it's that whole meme of like, I know what they want and where they're going. So it's like, oh, I know what you want and what you're going. Good for you, God bless you, but not around me.
Yeah.
Not in my property, not in my life, not in my family, not in my institutions.
And then we find in those moments, okay, because we are neighborly with this person, what is the 20% thing we do share in common? Let's avoid the BLM stuff and talk about knitting or...
Yes. Yeah, and that's where people go, oh, but Scott, that's superficial. They're not your friend. They're a neighbor. So how do you keep the peace with neighbors? You keep away from the things that are conflicting, and you be neighborly. That's why people talk about the weather, sports, knitting, hobbies, etc., kids. It's like, oh, this is an interest I know of yours that doesn't have to do with anything conflicting of us. And that's okay. It's okay to be superficial.
And it keeps the peace. That's what it doesn't invoke control on the other person. And it's like, what we say to our neighbor or to your coworker, it's not going to change their opinion because you are not friends.
Yeah. And so good fences make good neighbors. Boundaries, right? Boundaries make good neighbors. So I don't expect my neighbor to be my best friend. I don't expect my neighbor who believes 80% different things to me to now understand me and love what I love. And it's like, no, you're my neighbor. So I'm going to keep cordial, keep respectful, and keep that boundary. I'm not going to go spill all my whole heart to my neighbor. That's what friends are for, right?
Because what happens when you do that is you create awkwardness.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And mistrust. Like, this is scary.
Eggshells. Like,
Yeah.
you do not, every time you see someone, you do not want it to be eggshells that you're walking on. So it's like, out of respect for you, there are issues that we are going to avoid. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and so it's with your friends where you have a large agreement of values and interests that you want to be very honest and vulnerable about. And that's where the great joy of relationships and friendships come. There's a great scripture in Proverbs, kind of talking about how a friend can be closer than a brother. That's because family a lot of the time is in the neighborly side, right? We grow up with them, we're in the same place as them. And of course, you know, what a great blessing if your family can become friends. But there's going to be people who are friends of yours who are going to have, 80% agreement on so many things. And you're like, wow, this is wonderful. I can bare my heart. I can be vulnerable. I can share, my deepest heart interests. And that is friendship. And so there comes time in a lot of people's lives where friendships grow in different directions, and then it is again a thing of becoming neighborly, haven't seen this person for a couple of years, or they went off and got married, or went off to another mission or job, and things moved along in their life, values wise and interest wise, and we're no longer the same people. And it's like, that's okay. Like, give thanks for the past history, give thanks for the past friendships, praise God. But neighborliness is now where that friendship has moved to. It's moved to neighborliness. And likewise, you can often have neighborliness, like just working with a guy, or just happening to be at church with people, or just living next to people. And over time, you actually realize, wow, these people, we've grown together in interests and values, and now we are friends. So
we share a lot of values with these people, and they've proven themselves to be safe with the areas that we do disagree. Because I think that's the thing. When you're friendship, you can still have 20% of things that you disagree on, or yet you're on different pages on, but it's like, that is not the majority of your values that are in contrast. It's like, no, the majority of our values are in alignment, and the small bit that isn't a big deal.
Yeah. And how do we deal with that small bit that isn't a big deal? Because there's a huge tendency in the church, especially, to purity spiral, which means to like freak out on people and try to control them or cut them out for the little 20% of things where they're different to us. Like, oh my gosh, did you hear like this one little thing that we don't agree with, and now we cut them off? It's like, no, like for the vast majority of things, like they're wonderful friends to us. So it's like, yeah, we don't agree with that. We can hold space. We can maybe chat about it, and of course, if it's a huge, big bedrock value of your life, then it becomes neighborliness. Oh, that person's a neighbor, they're not a friend. When you go through life, not everyone's a friend, but most people are actually neighbors, and so you can love your neighbor, hold space for your neighbor, and don't get disappointed and angry and awkward when people who are neighbors don't reciprocate to the level of friends. And it gives you great confidence to go and meet people and to be hospitable to people who you don't really know their values out of neighborliness, because you have good boundaries. Going and being nice to someone doesn't mean you're now best friends and you have to invite them back home. No, like I can greet people, I can be nice to people, I can find out their interests. And, I also can have boundaries and not allow them into my life if I don't trust them or feel safe about it.
Growing up in the church, there is this heavy expectation of once a friend, always a friend, no matter the circumstances. My friend Margot recommended the book Homemaking by J.R. Miller, and he made a really interesting point that said, when you get married, a wife will lose the friendships of her past to now join her husband's life, and you are now one with him, and you'll make new friendships. And for me, this was like really mind-blowing, because I've never heard that in my life, and a lot of condemnation has come in my life from being in a different season than I was when I was single, and not able to maintain the level of intimacy with friends that I once had when I was single and living in a location with those people. It wasn't sustainable for me to bring all of those friendships into my married life and learn to be a helpmeet to my husband and take care of the home. And
our interests change when we get married.
Right.
We were single people with single interests, and then we became married. We're like, wow, our interests have changed.
And there's no ill will towards any of my friends from my past single life. I don't have any ill feelings, but things have changed. So I just think it's helpful to identify these things, that you can separate neighborliness and friendliness and friendships from neighbors, and have peace about that and not have any condemnation. We live in this world where you think you should have 1,000 friends, and if you are very honest and clear on your values and you want to run with people who have your similar values, 80%, then you're not going to have the ability to steward many friendships.
Yeah.
So,
and to steward all the neighborliness of your past life, because we move on so much. We move on from jobs, we move on from places, we move on from churches, we move on from teams, we move on. And so, to try and keep all of these relationships together, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. And so, men primarily are going to make their friendships through their mission, through their work, through their domain, the thing that they're doing. So if you've moved domains, where you are now is going to be your most values aligned group of guys, and of course you're going to be friendly and thankful for the guys in your past, but you're not fighting alongside each other all day. You're not grinding next to each other all day. And so you don't have that same level of intimacy with those guys and so to try and keep that up is very hard. For ladies, friendship will primarily come through family and through marriage and through children and through the household. And so as a single girl, you're with all the single girls who are all wanting to be married.
Yeah.
And then we get married.
Well, I would say for single girls now, the focus is unfortunately very masculine and it's very mission. So for a lot of single girls, friendships are built around college experience, the workplace. And then when you get married and you come into your home, it's like, actually, I really, really crave friendships from other ladies who are stewarding their home, where you can share recipes and learn how to do different things that benefit your household. It's amazing how that shift happens. For me, it did. When I got married, it's like, I want to garden. I want to learn how to cook. I want to iron clothes. Like things that I had no interest in as a single woman and things that I didn't even know how to do as a single woman. And now that I'm married, I'm like, I want friendships that edify these things. I want friendships that edify how to grow my own food. Like we can share in our values of how to build our household. And that's a hard shift when you go from being single to married, because then all of your single friends, and you hear about this all the time, single people get really hurt when their friends get married and then they feel abandoned by them. But if we're honest, that's a very natural thing, because she's left who she once was to now be a helpmeet to her husband, and her role in life has significantly changed. And it probably wouldn't have been that different 100 years ago, because girls lived with their parents and helped in the home until they were 18, and then they got
part of a household. They just changed households.
Yes. Whereas now, from our 18 to 25-year-old singleness, we've been on our own. So it's a very stark contrast when you get married. For most girls. Some girls have done it right and have stewarded their femininity throughout their 20s. So it's probably a much easier transition into married lives, friendships. But if you are a single girl in the world and then you switch over to the more domestic side, it's very challenging, because your single friends will no longer understand, like, why have you changed? I really struggled with even how to communicate my change of life circumstances and my change of values, because within any friendship, people want to remember you from who you were in that season of life that you shared together. And I think that's where for us, it's like, we need to understand that this is why we have to understand people's interests, and it's important to learn people's interests, because then you
mature into your interests,
and you can see like, okay, like I can see their interests, and it's different or stronger than it was when we were in relationship, and we've changed, and that's okay.
Because I think that's a lot of our 20s life, is the exploration of interests. I think I like this, I think I like this. So you have like a plate of 10 different things that you think you love. And by the time you 5-10 years down the road, you've dropped off 3 or 4 of them. You've like doubled up on 3 or 4 of them. You've gone further and more mature in your character and personality and the people you've met and the opportunities you've taken. And so who you are 5-10 years down the line from who we were as 20-year-olds is you should be a far more mature, far more deeper, far more clarified person. And so we hang out around a lot of unclarified people as single people, because you know, that is why we are in that place, is because we aren't yet clarified. And then, you know, you slowly clarify and mature, and so you look back 5-10 years later and you're like, yeah, all these people have clarified and changed, and you know, God bless those memories and God bless those times we spent together. But we wouldn't be, you know, I have to come down from my mission to come and support your mission, or you have to come down from your mission to come and support my mission. It's like, no, we should both be crushing at our missions or at your household with people who are going in the same direction. And when I see you again, we can be respectful. We can, you know, thank God for our memories together and find out about each other's missions and interests and stuff.
Families.
But we cannot come down from our interests and our mission and our values to make other people comfortable.
Yes.
You know,
my mentor from my 20s, he would always tell my sister and I to hold people with open hands. And by that he meant, do not have expectations upon anyone. While they're in the season of life with me, I will be grateful, I will cherish them, but I will not grab onto them and have expectations of them. Instead, I will hold them with open hands. So if God moves them out and takes them out of my season, I can still honor, respect, enjoy the memories I had of them and have no expectations. And that has blessed.
No disappointments, resentments,
Yes.
bitterness.
Then you're never disappointed by anyone because you never had the expectation that you were going to hold on to them for the rest of your life. We hope that that's helpful as we're processing.
Yeah. God bless you.